I thought it might be nice to talk about some people and builds that have influenced me over the years, and also I thought it would be funny to make a video on people that range from only a handful of people know who I'm talking about, to literally no one knows who this is. So let's talk about some builds and some people, and I'll talk about what I learned from them and some other takeaways. I'm not going to be talking about them in any real order outside of convenience, so let's just get into it. I want to start with Semper Invicta, who when I met him was called I Wanna Cry or I Wanna Die, depending on the day. Semper was a member of TSD, as was I, and you'll find that this isn't the last time TSD appears on this list. Like many other players on this list, Semper was a very good player, but that's not why he's here. He's here because he was the best Kingpin player to ever Kingpin. Just when I was starting to stretch my wings with Kingpin, he told me, hey, why don't you use LBV or HVV instead of Suit? And it was something that I hadn't considered before. In my mind, builds were Suit or ICTV and nothing in between. But then I tried it, and lo and behold, it just worked straight up better. This unlocked the idea of 70 armor setups to me, which offer more survivability on non-dodge decks, while not costing ICTV prices. This let me play more decks easier and helped me grow as a player. But the reason I'm choosing this build in particular to show off is because this is the build, or at least my edit of it, that Semper used to beat Goat Simulator way back when. I don't know which number he was to beat it downless, spotless, but I do know that he was the first Kingpin player to do it. The next build I want to talk about is this Akimbo Pistol Anarchist setup, which, although I'm attaching to the player Orachan, is actually a build from Nozomi. Anarchist is about damage, and this build is about damage. Pistols aren't very good, in all honesty, worse than SMGs in every practical way, but the operating word here is practical, and if you want impractical, pistols output the highest single target DPS in the game. The Strix do it while being convenient and also not sucking, unlike the other pistols. There's really not that much to it, but this silly little build struck Aura so much that it was the only thing she played for, I don't even know how long. Out of however long I've known Aura, I've maybe seen like 3 or 4 builds from her, but it's less about the build here and more about the player. I met Aura not too long after I started to get good at the game. I opted to host rather than join, and for a couple days in a row, she appeared in my lobbies. I remember one day after using Inspire Basic on her, a skill everyone forgot existed, especially at the time, we chatted about the game for match after match. Afterwards I sent a friend request, and we would lobby up and just romp through public games day after day. To this day, my primary bot is Clover, and the reason for that is Aura. And if we're talking about Aura, I have to mention a player by the name Savvy, who I also met through TSD. Savvy was the original Aura farmer, but unlike the level 100 jacket solo build players of today, Savvy was actually good at the game. He played 4-player solos while teammates were present, and by that I mean he wasn't just running spawn point to spawn point killing everything before anyone else could reach them. He was doing that and every objective. He would top kill the lobby while doing every objective while helping teammates up, and then when the game ended, he would say, BRB gonna have a smoke, and then return to heavy lifting the lobby. But once again, Savvy was more than just another suit anarchist with all damage skills player. He could do much more. He was the first person I saw use Sociopath and tag team on Death Sentence, and of course, all while carrying the lobby on his back. I didn't get to play too much with Savvy due to time zone differences, but it was always a treat just to watch the master at work. The reason I picked this build for Savvy is because I distinctly remember the Brooklyn Bank game where he pulled this out. This is a build which, while having great damage output, requires a lot from the player. First off, there's no resurk method outside of taking meds, so you can't get downed. Second, there's no ammo safety net. The Krinkov needs to be played carefully, or you'll run empty in literal seconds. This was, of course, before the pickup changes, which made what he was doing even stricter, and he wielded this thing with such control that I was just left in awe. Let's back up, and I mean by a lot. Before I knew what I was doing, and before I joined TSD, I was but a fledgling rogue player stepping, not into Death Sentence, but into One Down not too long after it had released. There was not a lot I knew about the game, but armed with my Thanatos, Arbiter, and Rev skills, I knew I could make it through anything with enough dockbag charges. But one day I joined a lobby hosted by one named Federated, and what do I see? Muscle, an ICTV, a gun that doesn't one-shot enemies, and in place of the required doctor bag slot are those ammo bags? There may be an XXV100 attached to the name, but surely this player was a fool. And yet, they didn't go down and swansong through objectives, nor did they cower in fear in front of the enemies. I would keep joining their lobbies every now and then, and every time was greeted with a friendly carrot. Although I couldn't comprehend the ways of this person, it was clearly working for them. Eventually the time came and I would start to understand and move away from Rogue, but at this point, Federated was no longer anywhere to be found. Although the Federated account was missing in action, I could kinda assume what had happened. Federated the account was Federated the player's girlfriend's account, one that he told me he got on only every now and then. To this day, Federated the player may still be around, or not, who's to say? But Federated was one of the first signs to point me toward the fact that instead of Rogue Swansong, you could actually just be good at the game instead. Speaking of girlfriends, I want to talk about yet another TSD player, Rafrey. I had joined TSD and I was playing in a lobby with Grinch when someone off of his friends list joins. This player was, as you might expect, Rafrey. Rafrey joins, says hello, and then disconnects. He then tries to join again and once again disconnects. He then sends me a friend request, which I accept. Over the next couple days, he would join a couple of my lobbies and we'd play together. Rafrey may not have been the best player, nor had the most interesting builds, but he was a person that I greatly respect. One with a girlfriend. One who was just the warmest and most welcoming he could be. Some people have a negative image of groups in Payday 2, and maybe I can see why, but having recently joined one, Rafrey went out of his way to play with me, chat with me, and generally make TSD feel pleasant to be in. He was a team player both in-game and out, and speaking of the out-of-game portion, he got busy with life. Although I only ever really got so many games with Rafrey, he's not someone I plan on forgetting. While I only really remember that he played armor when we lobbied up, this build is specifically one from a guide that he, Grinch, and Uncle made for the M1014. Alright, let's shift gears and towards a stranger build and stranger player. Kokuro is a person I met in Kev's streams way back when. As far as I can tell, they're the only player on this list who is still active, as I see them in a Discord basically every day. But that's not important. What I want to talk about is three things: Yakuza, the R93, and the Bronco. Kokuro played exclusively Yakuza. Why? Couldn't tell you. What I could tell you is that they often had a high-damage sniper rifle or a revolver in their hands. The less interesting part is the revolver, which was usually a Bronco. If you ask me, the Bronco is a fantastic utility, because it can hit extreme concealment, but Kokuro used it not as a utility, but as a weapon. First, they made it longer. Second, they hit heads, and only heads. Seriously, this person is a head-hunting machine, and it was even more apparent when they had a sniper in their hands. Any would do, but the R93 is different because I remember exactly how I felt when they picked it on Green Bridge. Useless. Useless is how I felt. I never really took long-range scopes seriously because, first off, most maps don't have sightlines worth taking such a scope for, and second, my aim just isn't good enough for benefit. But with the power of a Box Buddy R93 and an ammo bag, Kokuro wiped all of Green Bridge clear from this one spot. Try as I might, there was just nothing for me to even shoot at. I have never seen such oppressive power at such an indiscriminate range. In the gameplay you're seeing, I'm playing poorly, and I still have well over 20 kpm. The only issue I can see with this build is honestly dozers, but that's because I can't consistently kill them through my aim, which was never a problem that Kokuro ran into. From everyone on this list, Nash is the only one that I hadn't actually interacted or played with that inspired me. Of course, in the years since, I have actually played with them, but that's beside the point. Nash is a Russian player, and more importantly, YouTuber. One day I ran across some of his non-solo stuff, and it was both informative and entertaining. But one thing that I really hung on to was his Sociopath build. This build was, 1, powerful, and 2, fun. This was still in the era of dock bags, so Bulletstorm setups weren't something you'd see often, and it felt quite fresh, even if it was comically powerful with a commando in hand. This led me to playing with Socio more, and eventually making my 5 Sociopath builds video. And I don't think I need to explain why starting the biggest and most important series on my channel was a major point. On top of that, I even have a reference to him in a video every now and then.
Для тех, кто решится взять в руки таких зверюк, советую прокачать только криты, берса не надо, ибо вы будете слишком перекачаны в урон. Да, в Payday бывает и такое.
Some people will tell you that Krenkov's and body expertise is enough, and that Berserker is unneeded and completely overkill. Some people are wrong. Well, not really.
Although there were a lot of YouTubers for Payday, very few of them were good at the game and good at YouTube. Nash was one of those who, although mostly played solos, would sometimes release an actual piece of content. Without him, who's to say whether I'd be where I am today? Since we're talking about Russians, there's another Russian that I need to mention, one that I only know by the name Ethan. This was because they, well, played Ethan. They constantly changed their names, so they are hard to keep track of, but I could tell when they appeared based on a couple of factors. 1, Infamy 7. 2, the same outfit. 3, an unconventional build. And 4, incredible performance. The first two factors don't really matter that much. It was just how I knew that they were them. But the second two were what interested me. They'd always join, then make a new build after every match. A minute or two in lobby and they were ready to go. Health Armor, LBV Anarchist, Tag Team, or Crook. Whatever they wanted to play, they did. This fuck you, I play what I want attitude is something I admire. In a community that only plays a handful of quote-unquote viable builds, the extensive build options are a complete waste. This Ethan player showed me that being good at the game allowed freedom and fun that I never really expected. It's another one of the reasons that I threw caution to the wind and started playing weird. After playing with this person a handful of times, I started to realize that I actually quite liked Ethan's lines, and so I switched from Bodhi. They never really talked much, but it was on this Crook build that we talked the most during a Hell's Island game. Some things I learned is that this person was truly obsessed with Ethan, claiming to have 13,000 plays on their FBI files and 0 on any other character. And to be honest, I could buy it. After I switched to Ethan, this person would join my lobby, play until the end, then quit so that the heist doesn't register, and then rejoin. It was wild and hilarious. Eventually they told me to stop sending them friend requests, so I sent a couple more for good measure, and then they used a crasher on me and never joined again. But maybe that's just the price of doing business with Russians. Where do you think mustard comes from? Not a question you're expecting, I know, but it's not exactly something I thought much about either. Anyway, mustard is made from mustard seeds, which I didn't even know were a thing. This was a bad segue, but the next player to talk about is Mustard Seeds, who I met amidst the DeMonte drama of whatever year that was. 2021, I think. Mustard Seeds taught me a very interesting little factoid, one that I use to this day, and that is to use first aid kits. Now, I knew about first aid kits, obviously, but I didn't know just how obnoxious they could be. I remember joining the lobby and looking at Mustard Seeds' build. Crew Chief, suit, no converts, no Inspire, pre-buff akimbo SMGs without ammo. None of this build made sense. But after watching her play, I had a thought. 14 first aid kits sure allows you to pull off some crazy shit, huh? Whether it's for healing, or for forcing objectives, or for holding your ground, or for reviving a teammate, 14 first aid kits are extremely strong and quite plenty. Mustard Seeds used first aid kits on health builds, armor builds, dodge builds, even frenzy builds. I never really understood how strong first aid kits could be until I saw someone using them correctly. Since then, the path of the Fack has called to me, and I have answered. Last, but absolutely not least, I have to talk about Mr. Pranka, or just Pranka. Pranka is another person I met in TSD, and perhaps the most influential of all. Although I never played with Pranka, we'd chat often, and he'd drop a build every now and then. These builds were unlike anything I've seen before, things I could never even dream of. In a similar way to Ethan, he played what he wanted and no one was going to stop him. However, unlike Ethan, Pranka threw all conventions out the window. Flak jackets and CTVs, using skills on weapons that didn't seem to make sense, using weapons I didn't even know were in the game, shotguns with silly ammo types, taking one element of a build and going all in on it, awkward combos, and so much more. Every Pranka build turned into a case study. How did he even come up with this? It was just so fascinating to me, and the one I'm showing right now is a true dual saw build. Dual saw runs had been around for a while, initially done by a bunch of old heads just dicking around. I brought these back up with some of the people I was involved with, and there was a small revival of dual saw runs for a short while, but frankly they were very easy to do. So we evolved into doing dual saw runs with Yakuza, which honestly were still quite easy with 4 players, a bunch of knives, and some converts. Pranka also did dual saw runs, but his runs were different. They were not to be uploaded, nor in lobbies with friends, there were no converts, and there were no sneaky throwables. Pranka took his dual saw build, and just went into pubs to start sawing people to death. An idea so absurd that it was never really even tried seriously. But this was just how Pranka did things. I wanted to be like Pranka, to make builds no one had thought of, nor would play, and show that they were possible. Among all other builds I've made, this is the one that I dedicated to Pranka, a true dual saw build, the way he intended. Pranka mostly played on Deathwish, and so no one had done a death sentence run with true dual saw before, and I'm not sure if anyone has done one since, but true dual saw is what I consider to be the pinnacle of, what even is that and why does it work? It would also be remiss of me to not mention Cringe HUD. You know, my HUD? The one people still leave comments about asking what they're looking at? Pranka made it. From what I remember, Pranka and I were chatting and I suggested a mod that misaligned the hit marker. Pranka then made that, and so much more, leaving the world with the most iconic HUD. Tragically, I accidentally removed him while cleaning my friends list one day, but I like to imagine he's still out there inventing new builds. And that wraps up 10 builds/people that inspired me, or that I learned something from. Of course, these aren't all the people that inspired me, but I thought this would be nice because I don't think these players are the obvious picks. Of course, I could talk about the old head solo players that I thought were good at the game, or Uncle Geldgil, whose streams I spent my high school lunch breaks watching, or Kev Killed, who got me to try streaming, or even someone like Rocky, who straight up created the teamwork build, which I then made some changes to and then shipped off as my own product, not to mention the countless mods he's made for me. There's a lot of people behind who I am now, and I thought it would be instructional and also nice to pull back the curtain and reveal a little more of myself.